who would be sharing his experiences with us. So we have, as we had already informed, we have Dr. Professor Arvind Galagali, who is a faculty of civil engineering. And apart from this, one of the most interesting aspect is that teaching is his passion and his hobby is civil engineering design. In fact, most of us do it for a living, but he does it for a passion as well as interest, and that is very interesting to see. So I'm sure that many of us have been sharing success stories. It's very easy to share success stories, but to share failures and to learn from them is one of the most important thing. So in that aspect, I am sure that most of us would have number of takeaways from today's talk, and based on his experience both in academics as well as in structural design as well as being an administrator, a combination of all that would give us an integrated and holistic approach to various issues that the construction professionals are facing in today's scenario. So a brief about him. Professor Arvind is faculty of civil engineering, KLE Technological University at Hubli. He completed his PhD in civil engineering from IIT Kanpur, Master of Technology in Structural Engineering from IIT Kanpur, Bachelor's of Engineering from College of Engineering and Technology, Hubli. As already mentioned, he is a teacher by passion since the last 30 years. Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, KLE Technological University at Hubli. He has held various positions of responsibility in various government and he is the technical advisor. He was the technical advisor to Minister of Water Resources, Government of Karnataka from 2013 to 18. Director Krishna Bhagya Jal Nigam, Water Resources Department, Government of Karnataka at Bangalore. A former advisor to Home Minister, Government of Karnataka 2018 to 19. He was also the chairman of Indian Concrete Institute, Karnataka, Hubli Dharwad chapter for more than 10 years. Consultancy design experience, civil engineering design as hobby since the last 25 years. Designed many civil engineering projects, high-rise projects, bridges, buildings, roads, water retaining structures, aqueducts, and irrigation structures. So that's the kind of experience that he has got. And with his already he has delivered so many lectures both within the country as well as outside, and being the advisor and member of various government committees, I am sure that we would be having a holistic approach. Before I give it to the speaker, let me also just give you a brief overview of the various brands of cements that we are manufacturing here at Ramco Cements Limited. We have 12 brands of cement. What we have done over the last few months, over the last few years is we have understood the customer requirements. When we supply concrete or when we supply cement to various customers, from individual house builders to various projects, we have seen that the concrete requirements keeps on changing. So what is most important is, rather than going as a commodity approach, it is better to go from an engineering perspective, understand the concrete requirements, the grade of concrete, the slump of concrete, the durability requirements of concrete structure, and then recommend the type of cement. So that is the approach that we are taking. So amongst ordinary Portland cement, as per IS 269, we have 43 grade, 53 grade, 53 grade infra, 43 grade infra. This particular word infra is for those concrete which needs to have a higher slump retention, in the sense that where you need to transport concrete for longer distance. We have a special cement for precast works, the Ramco Superfast, which is being used by many precast units. We have the PPC as per IS 1489, the Ramco Super Grade, the Supercrete, the Super Fine, and Super Plus. Supercrete is a PPC cement which is having a high rate of gain of strength as well as durability. So that is a speciality of Supercrete cement. We have Super Steel and Samudra as Portland slag cement, and Ramco Super Coast as the sulfate resisting cement. So we do not recommend one type of cement alone. It is not that when if we manufacture PPC or PSC, we just recommend that type of cement. It is not like that. It is based on the requirement of concrete that we recommend cement, and that is very important, because that needs to be followed from an engineering perspective as well. So these are the various brands of cement which I had already mentioned, the 12 varieties of cement. And we also have the dry mix range of products for non-structural applications. If you want to fix tiles, we have the tile fix, the block fix, the super plaster, the super fine, and the tile grout. So these are the dry mix products which are coming from our dry mix plant, which is established in collaboration with MTech Germany. Now, to understand the customer requirement and to go from a engineering perspective, it is very important that we do have a research center. So we have Ramco Research and Development Center, where we have various equipments for checking the durability, the strength, the various fine parameters of cement as well as concrete. Like say, for example, we have the mercury intrusion porosimeter, we have the X-ray diffractometer, which is useful from both research point of view. So many of those colleges and prestigious institutions who wants to have a second opinion about concrete and cement come to us and ask for studies to be done on those particular samples. So this is one thing that we have been able to do at Ramco Research Development Center. Organization has been able to get the 4 Leaves Award for leadership in technology and in environmental practices. And some of our customers, we have customers from ITD Cementation, L&T, Haldia Cement Authority, Haldia Development Authority, metro projects, our cement is approved. So these are some of the things that we have got, and some of our customers, major customers who have made various kinds of concrete, various, concrete which has to be transported to longer distance. Say, for example, in Bangalore, we have what you call 3 hours transportation time of concrete, which needs to be ensured. So the concrete should not set within those times. So over the last few days, we had a number of webinars on various topics. We had on smart cities, we had on reinforcement detailing, apart from having on cement, concrete, and we had a number of talks on geotechnical engineering, because foundation being very important. We had a talk on interesting aspect of Petronas towers. So like that, we have number of case studies spanning various fields of civil engineering, which is of interest. Now, today the speaker would talk about a very important aspects which we need to be careful, because safety is of paramount importance. So we need to learn lessons from the structural failures. So let me invite today's speaker, Professor Arvind Galagali, to share his experiences to the construction professionals. Welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for having accepted our invitation and having given your valuable time and knowledge for the benefit of all the professionals. We invite you to this forum on behalf of Association of Consulting Civil Engineers and the Ramco Cements Limited. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nico. Is it all right? Good morning, everybody.
It's in.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir. We are able to see your screen.
Both audio and video.
Yes. 220 professionals have already logged in, and very good. We are able to see it clearly, sir.
Fine. Okay, there is. Yeah. Fine. 1 second. Good. Good morning, everybody. And it is nice to meet all of you, if not in particular face-to-face, but at least through these recent technologies like webinar and online communication. And due to the pandemic, what we are experiencing all these days, I think this is only the way for another few months or maybe a couple of years more. We'll have to be dealing with these kind of webinars to share our knowledge, experiences, communicate each other, interact, and make our living through. And to start with, let me thank Mr. Anil Kumar, who spoke so nice about me, and also giving me the opportunity to interact and share some of my thoughts on the topic today. And I've been asked to talk about the learning from structural failures. This is a very interesting subject for every one of us, because in life also we have failures. In the nature, we have failures. In structural engineering, we have failures. So we are forced to experience these kind of failures. But are we learning anything from these failures? As you look through your childhood days, we are not being taught to face the failures. If something goes wrong, all of us would get a kind of depressive mode or any other thing. We get away, shrug away from our responsibilities, all these things. But unfortunately, we fail to learn anything from the failures. Now, to understand some of these terms, what is a failure? And what I'm going to talk today is how the failure is defined and how the structure is going to fail and what are the causes and who is responsible for this. Is there anything that we as a professional have to do, or is it something to do with the Mother Earth or the nature or some external forces that are beyond our control? That is going to be the crux of my presentation. If something is within our hands, and if these failures have happened earlier, then why these kind of failures are recurring every now and then? Is it because we are not able to learn anything from that and adapt those kind of learnings in our day-to-day and upcoming projects? This is what we'll be looking at in next 45 to 50 minutes presentation. So I come from a teaching profession for more than 30 years. I've been a professor in the engineering college and later into administration. So I would like to talk about few things. It is not that I'm talking about any technical matters and big things, but I'm only refreshing your memory, which is already there and maybe covered due to something else, which I'd like to open it up and make you aware. Yeah, these are the things for which the failures in the structural engineering are happening, and these are the ways what we can really learn from the structural failures. And I fail in my duty if I don't put my acknowledgements to many of my gurus at IIT Kanpur, particularly Professor Sudeep Kumar Jain, who is a pioneer in the earthquake engineering. Dr. C.V.R. Murthy was also my professor at IIT Kanpur. And also most of the presentations and some thoughts are due to them. And other IIT lectures, and of course, Dr. CSV, a legendary figure who was responsible for most of my learning throughout the career in the consultancy field, and a lot of literature, Lassen and Tibro being the pioneer in the construction, and of course, the base is the codes, internet, and other domain experts. So I put my acknowledgements to this and use some of those thoughts and ideas to refresh the memory. What are these memories? And you need not have to be afraid of, generally as a teacher, my experience is students generally get afraid of the moment they see big equations. Don't worry, I know where to thrust upon and what to teach, what not to teach, and what not to present. So my presentation is going to be absolutely equation free and totally non-mathematical. So you just see like a movie and try to get gist out of the movie what you see in the next 40-45 minutes, and without really bothering about the tough mathematical equations. But in the process, I would not fail in touching upon the very important concept which you need to be taking it forward in your day-to-day life as well as in your consultancy projects in designing most of the buildings and infrastructure projects. So I touch briefly about the concepts which have led to the structural failures, so that will make you a perfect, and particularly for it will be useful for the students and the consulting engineers who are practicing in the field. So my focus would be on those highlighting the concepts, and we try to understand why structures fail, what are the reasons, and if they are failing, who are responsible, and how much each one of them is responsible to the failure of the structures we are going to see. And if it is not within our purview, then probably we don't have to really be bothered about it. But by the time we reach the end of the lecture, you would know who is responsible and what is the extent to which one is responsible in the entire domain of structural engineering. So at the couple of slides at the end, I touch upon the learnings that we should be doing in the understanding the structural failures. So let's go to the next slide. So these are the thoughts on which I'll be talking about it. And as it is understood, the failures are very difficult to understand, may it be our day-to-day life or even in the structural engineering, very difficult to understand. And you can see this figure, which looks like Greek, Latin, etc. And failure in the field of engineering as well in our life looks like something which we really struggle hard to decipher, to understand the causes, the reasons, and if you really want to learn, how are you going to learn once you don't understand that? So it's something very complex, but let us make small efforts to understand these kind of structural failures. And these failures are like, the very famous picture is like few people, blind people touching an elephant, and why I'm showing this picture is the failures are exactly like that, which will send different messages to different people. Also, different people would understand the failure the way which is conducive and suitable to them. So this is how, like, the understanding of the failure is it like something, blind people touching the elephant, or we can truly understand, which will become more clear once we go to the following slides, whether the structures and the failures are understandable, and if yes, how do you understand and how do you learn after understanding the reasons for these failures. Okay, so once we talk about the failure, I would like to brief your memory about the famous definition. What you need to understand is the failure is not exactly what you think as a total collapse of the structure down to the ground. It is not always true, not necessary that a failure means it is a complete collapse. Even the partial collapse or the cracks, or if it ceases to perform the intended function for which it has been designed, or if it exceeds the limits of the performance. Under all these conditions, we can say that the structure has failed once it fails to perform. Now, these performance definitions could be different for different people, but what we understand in civil engineering in general is the partial or the full collapse, or the failure to do its function leads the definition of failure. Now, to understand the learn from the failures, let us quickly look through some of the past failures in the history. Unless we look back, we will not be able to learn from the past. And these are some of the failures which are available in the public domain, but I'm only taking them and trying to highlight the reasons and try to bring to your attention. Yeah, this is how the structures fail, and this is where we failed to learn from them, and how those failures can be technically interpreted. This is what we're going to see in some of these things. Let us see the famous failures. And this I just taken, not in a chronological year, like, earlier, the first ones or the last one. It's just a combination of some of the historic failures. And one of the earliest failure is what is popular even today is the Pisa, Leaning Tower of Pisa, which was constructed in 1173. And that was one of the first failures what people and engineers in the field did understand. And you know that the total height of the structure is 60 meter and diameter is approximately 20 meter, and it is tilted right now by 5.5 degrees, and this inclination is increasing every year by fraction of mm. And the field engineer, geotechnical engineer, structural engineer are trying to still understand what is the reason and how do you really arrest and come out of this failure. And you can see this, the out of plumb is almost 20 feet when you reach the top. So it is surprising that a structure is still standing with almost 4.5 meter deviation from the bottom once you reach the top. And this failure is happening since last 900 years. And we have been trying to understand and arrest this till date. So many field engineers and the geotechnical engineers are making efforts. Is it due to the soil or anything else. So this is one of the earliest failures which has triggered that structures can fail due to various reasons. It could be from geotechnical consideration, or it could be from structural engineering point of view. So what you need to be really looking at these failures once I show them is, what are the reasons? Is it due to geotechnical? Is it due to structural engineering? Is it due to material? Or is it due to the load, etc., etc.? These are the things what should be ringing in your mind once you see these kind of failures. Okay. This is 1971 in Virginia, USA, a 16-story building which collapsed during the construction. Almost 2/3 of the building, what you see there on the left side, is failed before even it could be inaugurated. And a lot of studies were done on that, and they could see that the punching shear failure is the reason for the collapse of the upper story. And once the upper story got collapsed and it created a lot of loading on the lower floor, and that compounding effect went on, and the 15, 16 stories got collapsed in the 1971 Commonwealth Avenue at Boston. And during our last visit, you could see this new building, what they already rebuilt after the collapse. And this is again in the same city. And if you notice that just 2 years prior to this collapse, Skyline Plaza, in 1971, there was a failure. And again in 1973, this is a 30-story building. And what you could see here is, this is not a gap which was intended to construct, but it was a single building. But unfortunately, in this 23rd or 25th story, it got collapsed during construction. And again, that added load onto the lower floors. And the entire, this portion of 18-meter wide building, which was connected earlier, got failed like this. And it looks like, the two separate towers are trying to be built. But again, the reason which was found in 1971, we failed to implement in 1973 after a couple of years. Again, the reason is the punching shear failure at the 23rd floor, and it collapsed on the lower floor, increasing the loading on the lower floors, leading to a final collapse. And see this, and what you need to be seeing is it a one-time collapse? Is the question that should come to your mind. And if you also notice that these failures are repeating just after a year or after a decade or after a couple of decades. And the reasons also you could understand more or less there is a certain theme in these kind of failures. And that is what you need to be understanding to learn from these past failures. And this is the famous failure of the building. In the middle of the floor, you can see here, the middle floor, the top portion is intact and the lower portion is intact. And you'll be surprised to see that how a building can collapse somewhere in the intermediate floor. And this is what happened in a hospital building at Japan in 1995. And these figures and these failures would bring to your notice how a structure can fail. What are the different modes in which a structure can fail? And what we learn from this is most important. And this is the failure due to ponding. There is an adjacent building here, and there is an adjacent building, and whenever there is a lateral load, this building comes and hits the next building, and that has led to the failure of this building. So when you have to be very careful when you construct a building very close to each other. If you don't consider these engineering aspects, you are likely to hit upon the failures. And this is what you can observe here. And the other thing we learn in our engineering thing that large masses should not be there at the top of the building. It is not that it should not be. And I would like to tell you, all the listeners and the practicing engineers and particularly students, once you see all these failures, once I say that the large masses should not be there at the top, you should not get me wrong. They should not be there if you don't take care properly through your engineering design. So that is implied in all my statements. Once I say you should not be there or you should avoid. You should avoid if you don't design properly. And then failures happen if you don't design properly. That is the meaning you should always be remembering throughout my presentations. And you could see here the top, the heavy masses which were standing on few columns, particularly the water tanks, etc., behave very badly during the lateral loads. And more particularly the water tanks, if the water is half filled, then there will be additional hydrodynamic pressure coming into picture, leading to the collapse, like what is called as the slush effect of water inside the tank. So once you do design, you should be very careful in projecting such heavy masses at the rooftops. And you could see some of the things which were failing on the ground, but even the structures which are within the water are also failing. This is one of the oil extracting project in Brazil, which failed immediately after, even before the completion. They were not able to draw even a barrel of water, barrel of the oil. So it could fail in the sea itself in 2001, and the entire thing got sunk into the Atlantic Sea. So this is in, again, 18th century, very important bridge failure, Tay Bridge failure, and a lot of learnings happened in this the bridge failure, which was completed in 1879, though it started a little earlier to that, about a decade before. And there are 85 simply supported spans. And the failure occurred when there was a huge wind. Storm was there, and the structure collapsed. And that triggered important thinking in the engineering domain, that there is an underestimation of the wind load. And the cause of the failure was identified as the underestimation of the wind load. So wind has led to the failure of this, and people started working very aggressively how a structure can be designed under the wind loads. This is a failure due to wind load. And I would like to draw your attention to another important Tacoma Narrow Bridge in Washington in 1940. You know, this very interestingly, probably you can even go through the net. And just before inaugural, I think I was told it got collapsed, and it's a cable-stayed bridge between two long piers. And this happened because there is a resonance. You know that every structure has its own natural frequency. What I mean by natural frequency, it has a tendency to vibrate, which is natural to every structure. And load also, particularly dynamic loads also will have certain frequency. When the natural frequency of a structure becomes very close to the natural frequency of the loading, then something called resonance happens. Without any additional input, the amplitude of displacement goes very high. And this is what happened in the 1940 Tacoma Narrow Bridge. And after this, engineering fraternity opened up about the dynamics, how structures behave under the dynamic loading, and how the resonance happens. And probably you can recall your childhood days saying that the march fast on the bridge be avoided. The reason is only this: you know, whenever you march fast on a bridge, then the march fast frequency and the natural frequency of the structure, if they become very close or coincide, then there is a resonance. So the structure led to the failure. And one interesting thing about this is there is a photographer who was doing photography, and when the structure started vibrating, he could really focus his attention, and he could have kind of video picturization, and which has given very important inputs for the structural engineers to understand the behavior of bridge under dynamic loading and the reasons of resonance, etc. So this is what has triggered the thinking process in 1940 through the failure of Tacoma Narrow Bridge. And this is the recent bridge in Korea. I'm just showing you, this is another collapse of flyover in Korea. Don't be surprised that the metros or many other things, what you see in and around our area, the structures can even fail like this. The entire superstructure is intact, but it failed at the bottom of the pier and it has come down. And imagine if, these days you have a lot of shelters during the construction just below the workers will be staying just below the a construction site, and if something happens like this will lead to a devastation and killing of a lot of people. So you should be very careful in designing these kind of infrastructure projects when they are experiencing the dynamic loads. And this is one of the failures in India at Panji. Some of the people who are from Goa can realize this is on a Mandavi river, and surprisingly, this bridge got collapsed 3 times. Understand? Once it is collapsed, inside they redid it, second time, third time, and finally they could do it pakka and a safe structure. But what you need to understand is how the failure happened here. The superstructure totally got collapsed, and they fell into the Mandavi River. And this is how you can see the other view of the PR failure, superstructure failure. And the point here to note is the repetition of the failures at the same site. Why this is happening, what are the reasons, and what did we learn? And this is in 1978, cooling tower got collapsed, and you can see that the completed structure is something like, cut like a hexagon build. Top portion is knocked off, and the structure can even fail like this, and what we can learn. And probably all of you are aware, this is a very mundane picture from Shanghai, which got failed in 2009. And why I'm showing this for the completion sake is the structure's failure of the structure is not only connected to structural engineering, it has something to do with geotechnical engineering. And this is a peculiar failure due to the inadequate understanding of the soil and inadequate design of the foundation. And in spite of going for the deep foundation like piles, they came off like this. So this is a very important, and a lot of learnings happened after this failure in 2009. What are the reasons and what is the site effect on the design of the structure, and how do they behave under lateral loads and etc. So what you can learn here in the Shanghai building, and see how the structure can totally bend and start touching the ground. So it may not be a complete collapse, as you could understand. This is the merger of the building. And see this, the column failure at the ground floor, which is led and tilted like this. And why I'm showing you all this is later in few of the slides, you would understand, oh, what is the reason? This is the soft lower floor collapsed. And you would see what is that soft story, particularly the students and practicing engineers. It may be a very known thing for people of high academic repute and people who are already experienced if they are there in the presentation. But for the sake of the students, you can, practicing engineers, you can understand what is a soft story and how a structure can collapse. This is another failure of the building here. And you can see the other portion which was standing intact, and the front portion is only the failing. What you need to understand is, don't be under the impression that all structures tend to fail. No, there's something else. Some are failing, some are not failing. And you would understand what are the reasons and who are responsible. And this is, I'll quickly go through the flyover failure at Hyderabad, which is a typical case of geotechnical. This is one view of the failure. Just see like the picture I quickly go through. This is a failure, and the top structure also has come down. And you can see this, there is a tower during the centering portion. This is the portion which got collapsed. And this is a typical case of geotechnical failure, because you can see the pedestal. Probably you must have seen in the previous presentations also that it was resting partly, the supporting, the shuttering, or these things which are used for the superstructure were resting on a pedestal, and this pedestal was partly on a filled soil and partly on a strong soil, which has led to the failure of the support structure. And because of that, the entire structure got collapsed. And there is a lot of hue and cry, and you can see a lot of people who got entrapped below the debris, and a lot of vehicles got entrapped between the failure of the centering and supports. And this is what you must have seen in the televisions. And these are some of the pictures, and people died and were rushing to the hospital. Why I'm showing you all this is just to bring to your notice that failure can be disastrous, if we don't try to learn from the past failures. And that's the reason why I'm showing you all the pictures. And some things also can be due to the lack of supervision. I'll just show a few structures. And you can see again an important infrastructure project. You can see here, particularly the pedestal height. This pedestal height is different. There is a pedestal height is different. This is the pedestal height is different. Is it because of the improper construction or improper supervision? And more particularly, when an infrastructure project built like this, can you afford to have negligence during the construction? You can see here the missing support, another bearing and another pedestal coming on the other side, and the entire structure is supported eccentrically, which are highly vulnerable for failure. These are some of the pictures from the infrastructure project, the flyover project. And you can see this is on a turn here, and you can see the missing here. And you should not say justifying that it is on the curve, hence this side because of the super elevation, etc. is missing. If that is the case, you can see here there are two supports and one is missing. Do you think it is a design error, or it is a supervision error, or it is a construction error? What I'm trying to show you is who are responsible and to what extent, and the failures have been happening because of various reasons, what you can learn from some of these structures. Again, I'll take you to Delhi Metro collapse, and this collapse happened in 2008, October 19. You can see the superstructure got collapsed. The contractor, one of the famous contractor, you can see this, the failure, and people got trapped and few people died also. You can see the failure of this. See here again, 2008, there was a collapse in Delhi Metro. And before they could complete the project, again in 2009, there is another accident. And now see why I'm showing you this is the failures are repeating. Why we did not make effort to prevent these recurrence of failures? Why we did not learn is the message what I'm trying to send you through the series of failures which are happening repeatedly in our day-to-day life. And this is another view of the Delhi Metro. And see, in 2008, 2009, and again in 2010, this is a bridge collapse in Commonwealth. Probably you must have seen in the television that there is a bridge here, and it got collapsed again in Delhi, again in 2010, subsequently 9, 10, 8. So you need to notice that failures are happening repeatedly, and what are the reasons why we are not learning and improving. Okay, this is another view of the Commonwealth bridge failure. And this is another typical failure in Chandoli. You can see the pier cap failure. And you need to understand whether it is the failure due to the superimposed load or inferior design or inferior detailing, because the bars which are to be on the top of it, and whether they are not able to take the cantilever load. These are some of the points what you need to be looking at once you really design your building and construct your building. This is a failure of the pier and superstructure, luckily intact because the diaphragm in between is supported on the central portion, which has not yet failed. Okay, not yet I'm saying. Okay, so this is a Chandoli bridge. This is another bridge again in UP, Basti bridge. You can see the superstructure, how it collapsed like this during the construction. So buildings are failing, bridges are failing, piles are failing, foundations are failing, and failures are repeating. Point to note. And the salt chimneys, which are also failing. Again, I'll draw your attention. One at Raipur at Chhattisgarh failed in 2009. Another at Jhansi in UP in May 2010. Again, after a couple of months in July, there was a failure in Maharashtra. See, the series of things, 8, 9, 10, 11. And same tall structure, same chimneys. Why are they failing? What we are doing, why are we not learning from this? And of course, this is a building failure. And you can see only the lift tower or the staircase is standing, rest of the building is collapsed under the Gujarat earthquake. And maybe I'll show you some of the failures in the lateral loads due to earthquake, etc., from where we can learn, because structures give up under worst conditions. They have the capacity to digest until it comes to its neck. It can digest the mistakes done by us up to a certain extent, but when it goes beyond, it gives up, leading to the failure. And this is prestigious Santinikeetana Whitefield collapse in 2008. Again, the failure during the construction, failure in the top floor leading to the lower floor failure. So this is a Bangalore failure, what you can still remember, and the theme is the same, and failures are repeating. And this is some of the people who are from Karnataka probably remember Ballari collapse, and you can see here the upper floor. See what you see, this is not the ground floor. Ground floor has already been collapsed, and this is the first floor which has come to the almost ground. And see, this is how things can collapse. And you can see the reports why it caused the failure, etc. So the structure failed here. And now, what are the triggers for these failures? And invariably, we can think of the materials or the underestimation of the load, or it could be bad construction, bad supervision. There are many reasons for these failures, but primarily, I would like to draw your attention to the loads, and more particularly the lateral loads, because most of the structures fail under the lateral loads caused due to wind or earthquake. And our mistakes have come to surface through failures once we don't design our building properly, once we don't design our detail our structure very properly. And earthquakes become very important because earthquake is not a simple event. It has a multiple repercussions. It is causing the failure of the building, leading to the death of the people, and it causes tsunami. You know that Sumatra tsunami was a very famous tsunami, what we still remember, and a lot of failures have happened, and it leads to the liquefaction of the soil. And what do you mean by liquefaction? Just to understand, soil becomes like a water, and what you can see in this picture is the liquefaction of the soil. And when this structure resting on this kind of soil obviously fails because it loses its entire support at the base due to liquefaction of the soil. And again, the cause is the earthquake. And earthquake can also cause landslides, and these can lead to the failure. And earthquakes not only cause the failure, landslide, etc., but a lot of fires have been triggered due to the earthquake itself, because of the short circuiting during the earthquake, and so many reasons what has led to the fire failure due to an earthquake. And this is a recent, you still remember in Surat, in a coaching class which went to the fire. So fire also could be one of the reasons why the structure failed. So what I'm trying to bring to your attention is, what are the causes, possible reasons for the failures, and then you'll be able to really focus your attention through your domain knowledge to rectify it in your project. And this is another very important failure which still there in everybody's mind, the 9/11 World Trade Center collapse. And until such time, the codes were not knowing about this kind of loading, the aeroplane coming and hitting. And that is why I call this as code exceeding loads. So don't be limited to only to the code. Codes are there up to codes exhibit the knowledge, what has been acquired over last few decades till now. But these are some of the surprises, what can possibly happen, and enhancing our understanding of the likely loads that can lead to the failure. And don't be, because that was a very tall structure to into our failure, but I'm also trying to show you a small structure, even a pedestal on which Mahatma Gandhi is standing. This is when we visited along with Professor Sudhir Kumar Jain to 2001 earthquake in Bhuj earthquake, Gujarat earthquake, and that's why the IITK photo you can see there. So what I'm trying to show you in this picture is, even a small pedestal can fail if it is not properly designed. So you need not be under the impression that only the tall structures will fail. Even a small structure like a pedestal can also fail here, what you can see. And even a small bus stand, which again under the lateral loads, earthquake, the small structure can also fail provided you don't engineer it properly. That is an underlining point you should always remember. So why failures? Is there any design procedures? I'm just quickly showing you a brush your memory of the design. In structural engineering, and every one of us are aware, but I just quickly touch these points. We need to have an accurate estimation of the loads. Loads, I mean gravity, earthquake, wind, waves, snow, etc., and even some loads which are not listed in the codes as on date is the mandate on all of us to consider and accurately estimate. Accurately estimate the loads. Okay, so that is the first step. What we need to be doing is, then once the loads are acting on the structure, we need to estimate the structural response. And today we have lots of softwares available, and there should not be any difficulty for a simplistic modeling to a very complex modeling and analysis, and which are helpful through the computer tools. Once we understand the loads, once we understand the response, then we'll be fixing the sizes of the structural elements based on the kind of material that you choose, either steel, RCC, or masonry, whatever it is. And then we check for the structural response after sizing. Once again, is there any exceeding limits on the stresses, whether the structure is behaving elastic, because you know that most of the structures are not always behaving elastically, but they are likely to go into an inelastic region many a times, particularly under the earthquakes and other dynamic loading. So we need to estimate and recheck within the deformations, whether the deformations are within the permissible limits, so as to continue the structure to be functional, meeting the intended uses. So this is what we do: estimation of the loads, response, sizing, and cross-check the response. Then detail the structure and send it to the field for execution. And our intention should be, the detailing should be very, very properly done during that. And how do we do this? Who is going to help us in estimation of the loads, in sizing the members? So we have to design our structure strong enough. But strong enough for what loads is a question what you should always be thinking. There must be a sufficient margin of safety. And how safe is also a question. And all these questions are answered by the codal provisions, which I'll show you in the next slide. So you need to be questioning yourself when you think of structural safety. How safe is a safe design? How stiff? Safe in the sense, the deformations and the displacement should not be more than the limits. So how flexible or how stiff a structure can be? How robust? Robust in the sense, what is the maximum amount of energy that it can absorb before failure? So how are you going to really understand the energy absorbing capacity of a structure? So how do you really make a structure robust? And how do you make a structure durable? What are the provisions? What are the direct ways in which you can make the structure durable? So you should be attending all these questions if you really want to make a safe structural design. Then modes of failures. And there are different modes. If at all their structure fails, I want it to fail in a particular way. Of course, I don't want the structure to fail, but you can also have an inevitable situation. If the structure fails, let it fail in a controlled fashion, in the controlled modes also. And before failure, I want my structure to give enough warning so that I can save my life. So these are some of the principles on which you should always be thinking once you design your structure. And what is the service life? What code says about the service life is still a question mark. So how I should design my structure and how many years it should be safe, whether it is 50 years, 100 years, all these things, there are certain codal provisions. So all these uncertainties are addressed through an excellent codes. We have excellent standards to understand and address all the previous thoughts to make a structure safe. But in spite of this, then why are we facing all these problems? We have an excellent codes in different BIS, IRC, national, international, and different countries have different codes, etc. We have excellent analysis and design tools, quality materials. I could see that steel and concrete are excellently produced in the factory with appropriate quality controls. Then we have enough detailing tools. Even to have everything, then go back and ask the question, why the structures are still facing, why the structures are failing, and why it is the failures are repeating. That's the question what you should be asking. Then see, I'm just showing you the guidelines, the codes, detailing, etc. You are all familiar. I'm just showing you a complex view of picture over picture just to refresh your memory. You can always go back to the different codes and look into design, loading standard, design standard, detailing standards, etc., etc. But in spite of this, why structures fail? Why they are recurring? Are we not learning from our past experience? And what is the missing link? When you have such a excellent tools, good materials, everything, but still they are repeating, then that makes us feel that there is some missing link, and due to which the failures are happening repeatedly. Can we afford these failures? And definitely not, because the loss of life, loss of property, loss of infrastructure, and that will lead to a final economic loss to the country and the society and the humanity at large. So now you cannot afford to ignore these failures. And then now I will take you how severe it is. Can I afford to ignore? What is the vulnerability? I'll show you the vulnerability map which are available in the codes, but what you can notice here is the 60% of our country is prone for the earthquake hazards, 16% for drought, 12% for floods, and 8% for hurricane, wind, etc., and 3% for the landslides. So what you need to notice that, the major contribution, major cause, major trigger is here, which is something to do with our engineering fraternity. Of course, all other things are also connected to us, but I'd like to touch your attention to this important trigger, an earthquake or a lateral load or a dynamic load, which has a vulnerability as high as 60%. And you can see this, a lot of earthquakes which have happened in the past, and these are available in the net, you can see this. But what you need to notice here is, in addition to the infrastructure loss, we have lost the human lives to an extent of a few lakhs. What you can see here, Indian 2004 tsunami, the Sumatra tsunami has caused the life more than 3 lakhs. You can understand the loss of life under this man-made structure, which are very important, and that's the reason why we need to be really addressed. And this is one famous earthquake that happened in 2001 on the 26th January, when the flag hosting was about to due in the morning, and suddenly there were tremors, not only in Gujarat, but the repercussions. The news created a tremor across the globe. There was a 6.9 Richter scale collapse, leading to a huge loss of life. More than 20,000 people lost their life in Kutch and the Bhuj areas. And what you need to understand is the damage of the structure happened due to the earthquakes, not necessarily in one kind of structure. Why I'm showing you all this is, anything can fail, even the masonry structures can fail. You can see a simple structure which failed in Gujarat, Kutch, Bhuj, and also in Kilari earthquake of Latur. What you can see there is a small structure which were masonry structure also got failed. So the masonry structures can fail, small structures can fail, and this is another view what you can see. And this is the coarse and rubble masonry. What you can see is the failure under the lateral loads. And you can see this masonry structure, simple ground floor, a stone masonry and a slab over that. And because it is an RCC slab, portion of that is still standing, but you can see this wall. And this is again an RCC structure, but unfortunately there are no lintel bands, which has caused the cracks. So, but you can see that the importance of the lintel bands which you should be providing. So the small can fail, large can fail, masonry can fail. And now let's see RCC structure. This is one of the 10-story building which got collapsed. And on the right side, what you can see is the staircase is still standing. but this staircase is standing and it got detached from the rest of the building. So the RCC structures can fail under the loading. This is another building, the government buildings. You know, you can see that government buildings also are prone for failure. And the right side building is a temple. So government is not spared, and even temples are also not spared. They are also failing under the structure. And to your surprise, you can see that an RCC structure can fail like this, which looks like, you know, it is being cut into two parts through the hexablade. Okay, so it is very difficult to imagine that an RCC structure can be cut into two pieces like this, and you should be very careful why this happened. So the masonry can fail, RCC structure can fail. And now looking at the previous things, what we can learn. My point here in today's presentation is what we learn from the failures. And some of the failures, what you can learn is tall structures can fail, short structure can fail, big or small, heavy or light. You could see some of the structures which were very heavy, or some are small, or some are light. So all are subjected to failures. Important or minor structures, all these things are prone for failure. So what you need to understand is failures are happening in every kind, every walk of life, if and only if we don't do our duty. And now whether we are doing our duty, whether we are doing justice to our profession is what I am showing you in next couple of slides. I think I'll have to rush a little fast. And even the government buildings are not spared, temples are not spared. So all these things, failures can touch anybody and everybody. And even a great soul, Mahatma Gandhi's statue, what you can see on the left side, is also not spared from the failures. So now this is what you learn from the failures. Now, who is responsible? Let us see this. Obviously, you should not be under the impression that all structures will have a vulnerability of failure. No, all structures need not fail. And if some are failing, some are not failing, then who is the responsible? That is the question what you need to be asking. And in the same area, I'm showing you these examples from the same area where some of the failures, what you could see in the previous slides, these are the perfect structures which are still standing under the same earthquake load which they experienced. So what you need to understand is failures happen if structures are not properly designed, is the message and learning. You can see this, tall structure, chimney and cooling tower are still standing very well. All of them performed very well during the same earthquake, a good performance. And old structures, don't be under the impression that old structure got collapsed. This is a palace in the Bhuj, and this is a classic structure, and there is another temple. Some temples also did well. So what you try to understand is some structure failed and some structure did not fail. Then what is the cause? Who is responsible is the learning what should be doing. This is another structure which suffered minor cracks under earthquake, full intact, only the cladding is suffering the cracks. And you can see that the main structure is still standing without causing any major loss of life or the property. So this is a perfect building. Nothing happened, not even minor cracks in these kind of buildings in the same area. So what you should learn from this is only few are failing, others are not failing. The reason is the engineering point of view, what is missing. See this. This is a very typical structure. The front portion, what you see here, is collapsed. And the other building, what you see in the backdrop, is still standing in the same portion, same, of course, small damages happened to the cladding, etc. But otherwise, the same area, same side, one is standing, other is failing. Why? This is what you need to understand when the structure shows these surprises. So what you need to understand is it is engineering, design, and construction that matters in creating failures or in arresting the failures. So look back, who is responsible? Mother Earth, because she's creating the earthquake. Government, architects, contractors, civil engineers, builders, municipalities, development authorities, masons and workers who are constructing, and the public at large. So I leave this question to you because you can go back and see my previous slides, recollect my previous slides, and a few slides what you're going to see, and then you should be able to answer this question, who is responsible, to what extent. And I'll revisit the failures and try to understand. And the failures can be due to bad material, inadequate designing, improper detailing, and bad construction, then the poor maintenance. These are the major and predominant causes for the failures. And what you need to understand is invariably material failure is no more a consequence because all the materials are absolutely fantastic and they have been produced with a lot of care, and there is no question of inferior material these days. And the second is designing, because we have excellent tools. So designing also should not be a problem, but there are small lacunas which I are going to show you. And the third one is the detailing, which is people may think that it's very non-technical and not very important, and which generally gets ignored in most of our engineering design and execution. And the other reason could be bad construction and maintenance. But now what you need to understand is materials are good, and maybe you can see a little bit about the reason for failure could be design or detailing. I will show you one of the surveys in which who is contributing how much. And if the earthquake is the cause, we cannot afford to ignore. And now I'll show you only this one slide to understand the earthquake design concept. This is courtesy to our professor, Dr. C.V.R. Murthy. And from the left side, you can understand that different structures respond differently under earthquake or the dynamic loading is the symbol what you see here. Earthquake is a ground shaking, and the transmission of force from the foundation below to the structure is a function of the geotechnical aspects of the soil below. So what you need to understand is they are soil structure interaction, which are very important in the lateral load design under the earthquake. That is one concept what probably the students and the practicing engineers need to understand. I'm not going into the details, only I'm touching the concept. The second concept what you need to understand is all structures will not behave elastically. And if you want your structure to behave elastically, this is the elastic behavior, linear elastic, and the force experienced is so much. This is the actual earthquake force at this level. But should we design for this force is a question. And if I design for this high force to bring my structure in a linear elastic, my cost is going to be very high. Then should I design such a costly structure? The question is, would be no or yes, because why am I designing and putting such a huge amount of money in my structure to behave in an elastic way for an event which is a very rare phenomenon? Earthquake return period could be 50 years, 100 years, 500 years, or even 1,000 years. So it could be beyond my lifespan itself. So why should I spend such a huge amount of money in creating my structure to behave linear elastic? So that is one question. So we don't design the building for such a high earthquake load, but we design for a smaller load, assuming that the structure is allowed to go in a non-elastic region, so that there is a non-elastic deformation and continue to absorb energy, continue to show the deformation without actual collapse. This is the principle in the earthquake design. So we design the structure for a much lower force than the actual force which is likely to be transmitted from the earthquake. So once we design, we are banking upon this ductile behavior of the structure. So the onus lies on the structural engineer or the construction engineer to ensure that we cannot afford to design for such a high earthquake load. Once we are designing for a lower load, then it is mandatory to see that the structure is detailed and designed in a ductile fashion to have so much of deformation without collapse till this point. So this is one important concept, what you need to be doing and understanding. So what is the concept? Second concept is we allow the structure to suffer the small cracks, etc., in the frequently occurring minor earthquake. But in a major earthquake, high magnitude earthquake, we don't want our structure to collapse. Maybe some deformation, some cladding, etc. can happen. So this is the principle what is adopted, and there could be a separate learning for you to study the earthquake. But concept is we design for a lower value of earthquake load with an understanding that the structure is designed in a ductile fashion, detailed in a ductile fashion, and designed for the major earthquakes without any complete collapse of structure leading to loss of life. So this is an important concept what an earthquake resistant design is based on. So I'm touching only the concepts. And the third concept is very thing what you need to understand. A common, this is again the CVR Murthy and Professor Sudhir Kumar Jain, what we were taught during our course in the earthquake engineering at IIT Kanpur, strong column and weak beams. So this is a simple observation. Your columns must be stronger than the beams. Any student can understand, any practicing engineer can understand this common picture. What happens? If the beams are stronger, then the columns are weak, then the columns fail first under the loading. And if the columns fail, then the entire structure collapses. So I don't want my columns to fail first. That is the reason why I make my strong columns, and I can afford to have weak beams. If the beam fails, the failure gets restricted to particular floor. And this is only the concept that strong column, weak beam theory to be adopted in your structural design, or whenever you see a building, probably you could get your first impression whether it is a strong column or a weak beam principle has been adopted or not. Then, and if you don't do that, these are some of the failures. What you can see, only the strong beam and weak columns, what you can see the failure on the left side. And this is, you can see this, and you can see this, such a huge beam, but a very small column. This is a ground plus 3 building. One of our, we inspected this building when it failed really later, but you can see this, there's a strong column and a weak beam. So what you need to understand is the structure will not hide your mistakes if you don't follow simple principles as guided by the codal provisions. Then the fourth concept is soft story. And soft story is the story, see, this is upper portion, this is the lower portion, and the stiffness is contributed due to all the elements, beams, columns, and the masonry infill. So the upper portion is more safe, and the lower portion is now a soft story. And when there is a soft story under the earthquake or any dynamic loading, this is how it happens, and it collapses. And it becomes soft because generally the ground floor, what you see here on the right side building, the ground floor is kept open because of the parking, etc. So you should not have open parking. What I mean is you should not have, in the sense, you don't have to do this if you don't design. You can always keep it open provided you design it. And there is the design forces that are transmitted to the ground floor columns is almost 2.5 times the upper floors. So if you want to keep it open, and if you want to still make it strong, the columns in the lower floor with the open walls, etc., you need to be designing almost 2.5 times higher loads than the upper floor. If you don't do it, then avoid it. This is the logic what you need to be following, and this is the fourth concept what you need to design the lower stories for a much higher loads if you want to keep it open. And if you don't do that, these are the implications. You can see the lower floor collapse here, upper floors intact. This is again a lower floor, ground floor collapse, and the upper floors are still strong. Avoid or design, choice is yours. And you can see some of these, the middle story, which is a very soft story, got collapsed even in the middle of the structure. And you can see this typical collapse of the top story of the lower floor. And all these things have come to surface. The mistakes have come to surface during the crisis. And that is why good buildings survive the crisis. Only bad buildings, inferior designed building, non-engineered building may lead to failure during the crisis. And the staircase got separated because there is inadequate connection between the staircase and the rest of the building. And the heavy mass on the top of the building, framed structure got collapsed. Even the completed building you can see here got collapsed. And now with all these figures, again, you can go back and look and answer who is responsible. Is it the responsibility of the engineering fraternity, and the contractor also is a part of us? So who is responsible? What you need to always be touching. Then now some survey. Why I'm showing this is who is contributing more. Now, in one of the surveys, it says that the failure can happen due to various reasons like inferior material, bad design, bad maintenance, etc., or errors in calculation. But the contribution is the major failure, 78% of the failures are triggered due to poor detailing. This is a very important point what you should learn. So detailing is very important in addition to the design, what you could see in the previous slides. In the following slides, I'll just quickly show because I'm nearing my time. In another 10 minutes, I should be able to wind up because a few things could be 1 or 2 minutes, 1 or 2 questions can also be taken up at the end. So the detailing is very important. And if you ignore the detailing, what happens? Now I'll show you a very simple development length. There are many examples which I can show, but I only touch one point. A very simple development length, probably everyone would have studied at the first design class of an RCC structure. And codes also say, and the important infrastructure failure at Delhi happened due to such a simple concept of the development length. Now you could see, you would appreciate in the following slide. This is, I've taken this from the failure analysis report submitted to the government by veterans in the field. You can see this. This is the original proposal. This is a superstructure resting on a beam on 2 columns. And obviously what happens is, this was the original concept, but later, as you know, a lot of politicians, important properties create problem for execution of this. And hence, this much portion was modified and there was a change in the design. And they said, okay, let us not execute this portion, take only the cantilever portion and the rest the superstructure. So the design was modified in between during the execution time, looking at the site difficulties. And it was designed like this. There was a 4.5 meter cantilever to support the superstructure. And the reason is, this is, I'm showing you the same report that insufficient lap length in this cap showed some cracks. So obviously, once the cracks are visible, people become aware, and the work was stopped in Delhi Metro for a couple of months, and then they started giving obvious support. As this is coming down, they decided to give a cross support like this, and this is what you see, the actual things executed to support this cantilever portion, which was showing the cracks. But in spite of that, the structure failed, and the bracket came off. This portion got failed, this portion, and what you can see on the right side is the failure of the pier cap, cantilever pier cap, and this is the failure of the pier cap, and the superstructure came down, and this was due to insufficient lap length, which was the reason for this. This lap length, this was inadequate, and that is the reason why you can see this. The lap length is the bar which is coming from the top should have been taken sufficiently here, because earlier it was a simply supported beam, and the same thing probably must have been continued in detailing this, forgetting that this is a cantilever and load needs to be transmitted through this, and because of this reason, a simple development length was ignored, leading to a collapse of such an important structure. Okay. Then quickly, I'll show you some of the failures in the columns due to tie shape, diameter, and the lap length. And this is available in the code. Again, CVR Murthy gave a very excellent, professor gave an excellent thing. And you can see this, the ties must be bent here like this. And when you go to the site, particularly the site engineers and the students should observe that this is, it should not be a 90-degree bend. And this should be like this. And why it is important is it helps in resisting the huge amount of axial force because it is going to confine the concrete, holds the concrete tightly through this confinement so that the structure will not fail even under the lateral loads and the high axial loads is one thing. And this will also act as a support to this longitudinal steel in the columns. So the columns will not buckle. These are the very important reasons for which these proper ties must be provided. And if you don't provide, the structure failed. So our mistakes are showed in the failures. These are not actually failed, but after failing, we try to understand these failures. You can see this, there are no ties here and just below, and there is 90-degree ties and they are opening up here. These are all the problems in the ties. And this is again ties most of the time culprit. You can see here the opening. The concrete did not get enough confinement, so the opening of the ties you can see here, and the concrete got collapsed under the axial load itself. And sometimes you need to provide the links which are ignored, and we end up having only the long link one. And these two longitudinal bars are unsupported, but they behave very badly. So you need to have some links which you should observe. And here you can see this, there are no links, and the buckling of bars, what you can see here is the replication of such a simple detailing which was ignored. And we talk about the spacing. Code says the maximum spacing of the ties should not be so and so. But here, see the spacing. There is one here, there is another one, spacing is pretty big. And I don't see here any ties at all. And that is why you can see the buckling of the bar. So those simple guidelines exhibit, and see this 90-degree hook which are taken from the field. And these are the bars which are running outside the column reinforcement, which is not a proper detailing. This is a critical case of buckling of the longitudinal bars due to inadequate ties and the links in the columns. And again, this is available in the codes and the guidelines by Professor S.K. Jain and C.R. Murthy sir, and earthquake tips. You can see this. This is a proper detailing. So lapping should happen at the midspan in the column, and closer ties near the top on the bottom of the beam and top of the slab here. All these guidelines are there, but are we following? If you don't follow, look at this. There is no tie just below the beam. And we learn in the code that there must be closer spacing of ties near this. And there is no tie at all just below the things. And lapping at all one point. You can see the entire lapping happens at this. Code says you should not. Or 50% of the bars only can be lapped. But actually what happens in the field? Again, 100% lapping at one location has led to the failure. So I'm showing you, if you ignore simple principles of detailing, they will not be concealed. Structure shows you through the failure. This is the learning what you need to do. The buckling. Again, the lapping at one place. The structures can fail. Again, see, in most of the things, we end up kinking bars like this, which is not a good practice. Then the beams also, we have all these guidelines, closer stirrups and closer stirrups here. All these guidelines are there, but 13920, recent code also has come in that. And you can see this thing. And again, the stirrups should be like this. But how many of us observe when you go to the site whether the links are bent like this, not 90 degrees, and closer here, and the development length should be taken like this, like this. And if you don't do this, what happens? This is one of the reasons why improper shear deliver. And look at that. Is there any space for concreting here? That's such a heavy reinforcement, no space for concreting. And this is the diameter of the bar. Ties, we see in the code the minimum diameter of the bar should be so and so. But look at this, and it has come to the surface through the failure because we did not follow the simple codal provisions. You can look at that, 90-degree hooks and just a connection, no development length. The column bars come and just touch the beam. So they will not be surviving the crisis. They lead to the failure. And some important thing you should observe in the site is the beam column joint, and joints will be failing like this if you don't design. And the people, generally engineers, get surprised if you are asked to design the joint. But they are very important. The joints also must be designed, properly detailed. If you don't do that, these are the failures. These are the failures. Look at that. There is no concrete at all, like the joint. See here, once the settering is removed, there is no concreting. So joints have to be designed. Is the learning what you need to learn from these failures. And an important observation is, this is a beam running horizontally. This is a column going vertically. But the stirrups come here and stand up to this face. This side from the beam stand up to this. Ties in the column stop here, again start here. But there are no ties at all, nor the stirrups in the central portion of design. This is very important, and that is the reason why you tend to encounter failures if you don't provide the stirrups or the ties here in the column. There are ways, and even I'll show this slide, and I have limited time, so I'll not be showing, explaining this, so that the few numbers must be stored at the beginning before inserting the beam bottom bars. And once the beam bottoms are lowered, these additional things which were kept prior to inserting the top bars, then you can spread this and put it like this. This is what you need to be doing it. Very important. If you don't design properly and detail properly, joints are the major cause. And see here, the plans are here. These are the column bars and the beam bars. So the better designing, many a times it is very difficult to provide on the site. The beam bars should be going inside the columns like this, because architects want both sides of the same size, etc. There are certain constraints, but still, you, as far as possible, these bars must be straight passing inside the column like this, so as to have a proper strength in the columns. And slabs, I'll not touch these, particularly the cantilevers fail, staircases also fail because of the detailing. These are all some of the views. And the next point you need to be observing is the floating columns. This is order of the day. A lot of the architects will come and tell you, oh, I don't want this column. But as a structural engineer, you should be able to really understand what is the load path. Can I afford to remove those columns? So if you want to remove those columns, you have to ensure a proper load path for transmission from superstructure to the foundation. So that is what you need to be designing. I don't say that it is impossible to avoid columns. So like this, the columns will be coming at the end, and suddenly it comes inside and it goes like this. So the path becomes discontinuous like this. So you have to design carefully about this portion. If you don't design, look at this. There is a column here, somewhere here in this, and there is no column continuity. These are all the practical possibilities what you need to take care. If you don't design, then avoid. And after realizing the elimination of columns arbitrarily, then the structure started showing the distress, and then they started adding few columns as a repair, etc. And see, this looks very innovative design. One of the design, there is only one column and the entire superstructure is resting on only one column. Looks very innovative, but from architect point of view, it is very creative. But from structural point of view, you have to be cautious when designing these things. And if you don't design, these are the failures. These are the failures of designing the building very close to each other. And these are knocking or a hugging of the structure under the lateral loads. Now, after seeing this, in the same back question, come back, look back, who is responsible, all these things. So now you should be able to understand who is responsible. I leave that answer to you, and I'll show one or two slides from the quality. Look at this, and you can see this, the legend Professor Dr. C.S. Vishwanath sir, who visited one of our earlier irrigation structure, and the quality was so bad for such an infrastructure, and it got collapsed. He was investigating, and look at the support for the irrigation structure which got collapsed. We can see this, the concrete, the quality of the concrete, very poor quality. So as an engineer, you should be supervising very properly to ensure better quality. This is another view of inferior quality of concrete and the corrosion of the concrete. Look at the corrosion and spalling, and this is how you should make the structure. This is how you should not make the structure which affects the durability. And the bad quality shows up here, and the lateral load, look at that, no aggregates, everything is made out of fine. You can even scratch with the nails. And corrosion is, I'll not spare time for this. The corrosion is also an important reason due to bad maintenance. These are some of the views what you can see. And the corrosion as well as buckling, no maintenance, etc. And the fourth reason, there is a repair and retrofitting. And we can also learn from this a lot of failures. Once the structure starts failing, or starts showing distress, or starts showing cracks, then repair and retrofitting is the first thing that comes to the mind. And you see a lot of people made money out of it. Builder defy warning, and they went up for patching of the works. And these are all some of this. And cover the cracks with the coat and paint. See, these are some of the things what people end up resorting, and a very shady work and patching with a mortar, etc. And structural strength was found to be insufficient. They wrap like this, and you can see this on the plaster itself. They are wrapping and repairing. So what you need to learn is repair is not anything what it appears here. There's not a very proper retrofitting or a repair, but still we end up seeing these kind of things. which we should learn to avoid. Look at that. They are forgetting about the RCC structure and they are relying so much, on the brick pier. They are adding wherever there was a crack observed and a distress observed and additional support abutting the existing structure. These are all some of the things which are done very badly. And you can see the encasing on the existing, and that too with the plaster, they are doing this, taking it like this. And some of these things are directly taken from the floor and a ready floor. You can see they are not even excavated. They have taken some things here and support and directly resting on this without really bothering how the load gets transmitted, whether this encasing is useful or not. These are some of the things. Once the structure starts showing distress, we resort to repair. And what we learn from the repair is that the bad way of repairing would not serve the purpose. You can see this. These are the different views of the repairing. Again, the question is, who is responsible? Whether we are as engineers are responsible or somebody else. The question, again, the answer, I leave it to you. So, few slides. What you need to learn here is the failures happened. Lateral loads are only triggers, particularly the earthquake triggers. But the failure is not due to an earthquake, but it is because of the failure of the building. Hence, earthquakes do not kill the people. This is a famous saying, every one of us are aware. Only the unsafe structures kill the people. And that is why you need to be engineering properly. And I draw your attention for a few of the points what you need to carry when you go back home. We have good earthquake codes. Hence, buildings are safe. No, not at all. Just mere having the good earthquake codes and standards will ensure safe building. Not at all. Not true. You need to understand. Plans and design. Some owners and other people understand that if the buildings are approved by the municipal authorities, it is as good as approval for the safety of the building. Not at all. You have to be very careful. And the other assumption is, most of us, when you talk about the earthquakes, we feel that earthquakes are rare. Earthquakes, and we are in the safe zone because zones are getting modified every now and then. Hillary was earlier seismically non-active. After Latur earthquake, again the zones were changed. So any part, again, when the nature shows the happening of an earthquake, zone gets modified. So don't be under the impression that we are in the safe zone and I can afford to ignore all this lecture. I can afford to not to learn is not true anymore. Small is beautiful, tall is dangerous, not always true. Earthquake knowledge is meant for only college professors like me. No, it has to be percolated down to the practicing engineers and the curriculum. Of course, the university and the colleges are having earthquake design and it has to come to the site. So you cannot afford to ignore. Earthquake resistant design, people feel that it is costly. I don't think it's very costly, maybe around 8 to 10%. It may end up a little costlier than the conventional design. But think of if you are saving 8 to 10% in the cost of the building, at what cost is very important. And are you ready to risk your life? Is a question what you need to be answering. Okay. And earthquakes are rare phenomenon. People say that it recurs once in 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years. No, it can happen anytime, any moment. It may happen tomorrow. We don't know. Maybe you can recall your memory in the last couple of weeks. There were some earthquakes in the Himalayan region, including Delhi. They felt some tremors. And there were news that this is a foreshock indicating the upcoming high magnitude earthquake. So you have to be very careful and design your building, detail your building without ignoring the fact that the earthquakes are a rare phenomenon. And you notice that 60% is earthquake prone. And there are new kinds of loads. You need to be designing your building, not necessarily only through the codes. There are natural hazards and there is an impact, new codes, there are flights coming and hitting like World Trade Center, light aircraft, fragments, and terrorist missile aircraft, etc., fires. And there is a blast due to terrorist, gas explosion, etc., etc. These are the different kinds of areas we need to be focusing. And of course, there are some good codes available for fires, etc. And there are codes for blast. But there are uncertainties even still in these kind of blast loads, terrorist activities, cyber attack. These are some of the areas what we need to be looking for in the upcoming days. So now, once we have all these things, why failures are recurring in spite of all these studies? Because we are not learning, and youngsters are not allowed, not have a luxury of learning from the past failures because there are no proper documentation. Everybody is scared of failures. Nobody wants to document the failure. Everybody would like to bury it below the ground, thinking that they get caught. Okay, and people use thumb rules, misunderstanding, design deficiencies go unnoticed, and attitude. Structures can digest anything and everything. We have an attitude of chalega, and all buildings survive in spite of our mistakes at various levels. We should come out of that, and then only you can prevent. And the last point is no penalty. People talk about the penalties. There are penalties. What is the penalty? Now, I showed you this sketch in the beginning, and now again revisit here. And you can see in the lower portion here, it is a Hammurabi in 2000 years before BC. At that time, there was a Babylonia, and what it means is, this is available, all of you are aware, if a building built by a contractor fails, then he should be put to death. And if it causes the death of son of the owner, then the son of the builder should be put to death. See, look at the punishment, what used to be there in the earlier days. But now we cannot have this kind of thing, but at least codal and legal provisions are to be there. And what is in India? Big buildings killed 100 people, he is run and files are missing. That's it. 8 persons arrested and left after a few days. Killing from illegal buildings. Now, these are the things we don't have stringent rules in India, and officials ignored complaint. So many a times, all these things will be ignored at the authorities, illegal tower, corporates and civic bodies, the builders among six held for cash, crash, and they try to hush up the case, taking money, etc. These are the some things. And you can also see there are some side effects to learn. During all these failures, people and even Vastu, people started saying, your building is not as per Vastu, and that is why, I can correct your building from Vastu, etc. So you should not fall prey for these side activities where people make hay when the sun shines for them under these crises. So you have to be very, very aware about this misutilization of an event. But what you need to notice is quakes were there earlier, today also are there, and nothing is changed, but still buildings are failing in spite of the codes. Better standards do exist, but why do they exist? Now, the failures are happening, and who is responsible? Again, the answer, I leave it to you. What are the lessons learned? Few things. Structural failures, these exposed the flaws in the man-made structure, and we have ignored the simple codal provisions. If we had followed this, probably we would have avoided a lot of failures and deaths of life. And there is no motivation for proper engineering and construction, and we don't have proper monitoring mechanism by an authority and from engineering fraternity. And the greatest cause is reluctance to learn from the failure. And what we need to understand is there is a problem at all levels of design, construction, supervision, maintenance, etc., etc. So this exhibits a kind of system failure which we need to come out and learn from this. And what we need to learn is the faulty building design are the culprits in most of the cases. This is evident through my previous slide, and even experts and reports and literature also say the same thing. And you can see here in this red thing, if the buildings were followed by the codes, then things would not have been causing the failure. This is what is an outcome you can see in the right. So what you need to learn is we are ignoring a simple codal provision in designing and execution of the building is the main cause for the failure. What we need to learn. What is the crisis ahead? As I said, there is likely earthquake event is forecasted by the National Disaster Mitigation Authority. And other day, Professor Chandan Ghosh, who is also an earthquake expert, made a press meet at Delhi. You can see that these foreshocks in Delhi, which are found on May last week, are the indication of upcoming things. And most construction generally deficient, and solution lies in the building, not in the earthquakes or other forces. So there must be a proper enforcement of codes from everybody, from engineering fraternity, designers, contractors, and the legal authority. So what I need to conclude is the failures are happening and they are consistent. And failures have happened before and repeating even now. So we can and we must and all should learn from this failure. Then we can survive the failures. And word of caution at the closure is civil engineers, if they make a mistake, it is a disaster, unlike doctors, lawyers, and politicians, which you know. Then what is the roadmap for the safety ahead is create awareness, legal framework, technical competency at all levels, from students to practicing engineers to the supervising agency and approving agency, professional ambience to be created, enforcement by local authorities, of course R&D, and new building topologies are to be invented to resist all these likely failures. So don't get disheartened looking at these failures. Have confidence, because we have done it again in spite of all this. Now we are in a position to learn, and don't lose hopes, don't lose heart. We have a ray of hope, because we have recently created a statue of unity by L&T contractor, and this statue is the world's tallest structure, and the pride has come to India and the engineering fraternity. And so there is enough confidence, enough reason for us to be taking pride in our profession. And that is what is the message after learning from the earthquakes. So have a hope, don't lose that, because a very important thing is pedestal for Mahatma Gandhi is only shattered, but the father of nation is still standing. That is the strength for all of us. We believe in that and still take forward and create the wonderful structures and monuments in the coming years with all this technical competency, adhering to the codes and learning from the failure. And this is what I wanted to communicate. Thank you so much. Sorry for exceeding time. It just took a little more time than 15 minutes extra I took that. And thank you so much for all the viewers and the coordinators, etc. Thank you, Anil. Back to you,
sir. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was really very interesting. In fact, we did not see that the time has exceeded because it was so interesting. And the case studies of the failure of structure, as you rightly pointed out, there is always a ray of hope, and we need to learn from those failures. And you had explained very clearly simple failures like, development length, which many of them would not realize that it can create such a catastrophe. Not development length and all. We need to ensure that it is implemented. That is very important. And another very important point that you made was regarding the lateral loads, wind load or due to earthquake load, and even waves also. Even sometimes when I go to the ocean, I can see how the waves behave differently at different times, the force that it is having. So whenever we make a structure, I think one must not underestimate the effect of such lateral load. So that was really very interesting. Would you be able to take a few questions, sir, so that we can?
If the viewers have still time, because we already 12:38, maybe one or two you can entertain without holding the viewer.
Fine. Only two questions we will take, sir. If failures can occur for small as well as big buildings, why we have only stringent measures for G+4 and not for below flows with regard to structural designs regarding building bylaws?
I'm sorry to say that, because don't be under the impression that codes are there only for tall structures or structures beyond 4 stories. If you can see, there are codes for construction of ground floor structures only, or there are codes for masonry structures, there are codes for timber structures, there are codes for random rubble masonry, etc., etc. So only thing is, codes are there for everything, from single story to tall structures and skyscrapers, from RCC to timber, from PSC to steel, or from lower grade to higher grade. For everything there are codes, there are standards. It is not that codes are not there for a low or a small or a dwarf structure. The only thing is, we tend to ignore. Hey, small, we don't have to be really bothered about attaching or adhering to those stringent rules. For example, for a small masonry structure, who said no to providing a lintel bands? Who said no to some RCC bands at every 1.5 meter, 3 meter level, which behave very well under the lateral loads? Okay, these are some of the things what you can see from the codes. There are stringent codes for every structure, and if you follow those kind of structure, they are called as engineered structure, whether they are one story or a multi-story. So we need to follow. Codes are existing.
There are some of the very good appreciations that you have got. The presentation was very good from across the community. Professor from NIT Srinagar also logged in, and he has also given. There is one comment that has been made by one of the attendants. I am sure no code can design for plane hits like 9/11.
Okay, that was a kind of surprise, surprise what came to engineering fraternity. But now there are codes being revised, and these kind of blast loading and aircraft collision, like the vehicle collision on the ground, when you design a metros or any infrastructure at the ground, we design the collision of vehicles to the piers. Similarly, now the collision of aircrafts into a high-rise structure, codes are being formulated, and it may take some time for us to really get acquainted and popularity of those codes. That's a surprise that we got it from the failure.
Thank you so much, sir, for that interesting presentation. In fact, I think a lot of takeaways we could have from this webinar of today, the 45th webinar, wherein you had explicitly brought out the learnings from the structural failures. Thank you so much. And, in spite of all the schedule that you have got, busy schedule, in spite of that, you have come here. And on this Saturday afternoon, you have been able to spend time with us. We are indeed privileged to have you on this webinar. Thank you so much, sir. And I would also like, please, sir.
No. Thank you, Anil Kumar, for giving me an opportunity. And I also thank all my viewers from different parts of the country, who have showed their interest, and I take it as their love and affection towards me and my topic. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, sir. So we meet on Monday, 11 a.m. For the civil and structural aspect for coal-based thermal power project by Dr. Biman Mukherjee. So let's meet on Monday, 11 a.m. Till then, stay safe. Thank you so much.